This happened a couple of years ago in Tokyo, with 2 college friends. Mount Takao is a mountain located in Hachioji, Tokyo. It's a popular tourist destination, and you can access it from the city centre. There's a cable car which takes you up the mountain, and you can get some pretty awesome views of Tokyo. In the summertime, there's a beer garden too. But this story happened on a cold December night in the off-season. The cable car wasn't active, and there was no sign of people around. So, we headed up the mountain trail, with our breath fogging ahead of us and our torches in hand. There was no purpose in mind, no idea what we were doing. We had a few beers on board and just wanted to go exploring. Looking back, I think it was my fault. Because I said as we were passing by on the street below, "You know what, guys? I haven't even been up that mountain yet." To which my friend drunkenly replied, "Well, we'll change that tonight." I regretted bringing it up. The trail to the mountain was freezing cold. The muddy ground was hard with ice. Even though we had our beer jackets on, and actual jackets, we were still cold. The biting wind was relentless. After about half an hour of climbing up the mountain, I'd had enough. It was a stupid idea. So I said to my friends, "Guys, who wants to turn back?" I turned back to get a look at what reaction this would provoke. I saw their red faces and runny noses, and I knew what they'd say. "Yeah, we look like idiots," one said. "For sure," the other agreed. So we started heading back down the mountain, slipping as we went, laughing at our idiocy. We were in good spirits though, you know. We were making memories. One of my mates slipped on his ass on the way down, and we broke out in raucous laughter. We stopped laughing in unison when we saw torchlights coming towards us. Apparently, there were other idiots interested in climbing the mountain tonight. As we were getting close to the entrance, the mountain trail was narrow again. We were about to share a very intimate moment with the owners of those flashlights. I noted 5 people in total. I counted their torches. They looked to be of different age ranges and genders based on their heights. As we got closer, I noticed they were all wearing face masks. I guessed it was a family, but I couldn't get any sense of intimacy. They walked together, but in silence. I was about to say hello, but none of them seemed to want to make eye contact. They passed us, with their heads down. And that's when I noticed something. All 5 of them had a large black plastic bag in hand. Weirdos, I thought as we passed. My friends seemed to share my opinion because they stopped and turned around to watch them climb the mountain. We stood there in silence and watched them disappear into the dark shadow of Mount Takao. This encounter slipped my mind soon after. It was only a few days, or maybe a week later, when I was suddenly reminded of it. I received a link from one of my friends who was with me that night to an online news article. The news was, a partially skeletonized corpse has been found on Mount Tako. I shuddered when I read the next words. The corpse had been cut into 5 pieces. I called my friend, and we spoke about the probability that we might have been on that mountain when that happened. He remembered those people we passed and asked me if I thought they had anything to do with it. For a moment, I didn't know what he was talking about. And then it came rushing back to me. Those 5 people, wearing those masks, going up the mountain in the middle of the night, in the off-season, holding a black plastic bag each. And the fact that they didn't want to give us any eye contact. We spoke about it for a while, and we can only assume that we must have passed a family with something to hide.
This happened back in my university days, when a friend and I were on our way back from a trip. On the way back, I guess I must have misread the map, or we took some kind of shortcut because we got lost somewhere on the mountain roads. My friend was driving, and I was supposed to be the navigator. It was the one job I had. It was around 8 p.m, but it was already really dark since we were in the shadow of the mountains. I noticed a white truck up ahead, and I said to my friend, if we followed the truck, we would probably get back to a main road in no time. I thought it was a pretty sweet plan, because I didn't have a clue where the hell we were, let alone what mountain we were on. We were tailing the truck for a while, and then we realized we were going further and further from the main road, and further into the desolate mountain roads. We started to worry as the roads turned to dirt roads, 1-lane roads. The truck, more suited to these roads, sped up, and we lost sight of it. It was weird and kind of unlikely for the truck to disappear all of a sudden. There was nothing ahead of us apart from dark, dirt mountain roads. It was playing on my mind, but our priority was getting back on a main road. I was flipping through a map with a torch held in my mouth. There was no cell phone coverage. We were going further down the road when I noticed some lights behind our car. I looked in the wing mirror and noticed a white truck behind us. It was the white truck we had been tailing. I told my pal what I'd just seen, and we both watched the truck in the mirrors. We began to get a little creeped out by this. The truck then turned its lights off. Is it even possible to navigate these winding mountain roads with the lights off? I wondered. It was getting really freaky now. I was nervous, and I could tell that my friend was nervous too. I stated the obvious at this point. I think that truck from before is behind us, man. It's following us now. As soon as I said that, I began to sweat. My friend shifted nervously in his seat too. He sped up to test my theory, and the truck behind sped up to catch us. Still, with its lights out, we didn't know what to do. We began to argue about it. It was incredibly tense. Then suddenly, the truck behind us seemed to disappear. It felt totally hopeless. Whoever was in the truck clearly knew the roads. I really wish we didn't decide to follow that guy. We kept going forward on the 1-lane road, keeping an eye out for a chance to turn back, sending snappy, bitey remarks to each other about how we could get out of this mess. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, the truck swerved into our lane again and slammed on its brakes. My friend reacted in time, and once again, we were behind the white truck. He said, "If we don't do something, it's gonna end bad, mate." This was the worst. I've never felt so stressed out. A moment or two later, we reached a point where the road got wider, and my friend took his chance. We span into a U-turn. There wasn't too much space to turn, so my friend's car kissed the guardrail. On our escape, we noticed points in the road where the truck could have disappeared and appeared in front of us. That answered the question of how it was possible, but we still had the unanswered question of why. Why was this guy doing this to us? We knew that we were on our way back to civilization, so my friend floored it, while I kept nervously glancing over my shoulder to see if the truck was following us. I kept asking him to speed up, but I knew that he couldn't. That truck could pop out of nowhere again, at any moment. So we kept heading down those dirt roads until eventually, they became concrete again. I saw the lights of people's homes, and before long, we came across a non-franchised gas station. My friend immediately pulled in and we skidded to a halt. My friend ran in and grabbed the clerk by his arm and frantically explained the situation. He asked the guy to call the cops and for directions to get off of these mountain roads. The clerk didn't seem that interested in our plea for help, so we got him to go outside. My friend then said, "You have to believe us, there's some guy chasing us. Okay then, if a white truck with all its lights off turns up at any second, then will you believe us?" And just as he finished saying that, the truck arrived with its lights still off. It screeched to a stop a few meters away from the gas station. Then, it slowly turned around and headed back into the darkness. We weren't able to get a look at the driver, but we noticed something. There was some sort of logo and some text on the side of the truck. The clerk at the gas station said, "Oh, now I get you. The guy's from the church, huh?" "What?" "I say church, maybe cult's a better word." I pressed him for more information, and it turns out that apparently the entire mountain is their territory. They own a village, and the leaders and the followers all live there together. I understand that there are cults in Japan, but I didn't understand why that truck was following us. So I asked, and according to the old fellow at the gas station, there are frequent attempts to escape by followers of the cult who change their mind. So the cult are very wary of cars getting anywhere near their village. Their reckless driving and relentless pursuits of anyone who gets close to the village is said to be the cause of numerous accidents up here in the mountains. I remember that the cult featured quite heavily on the news and in the media a few years after, but it seems to have gone radio silent since. I guess that guy who followed us was a lookout for escapees, or for families trying to rescue their loved ones or something. It was a very creepy experience.
This happened about 10 years ago, when I was working in a rural area. My work colleagues and I were staying in a kind of hostel, or dormitory at the time, right in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally. You open the front door of the hostel, and there is absolutely no sign of life out there. It was a purpose-built building for us workers to stay in to oversee the work we had in that area. In the daytime, the place is busy and lively. But at night, it's eerily quiet. It's just so dark out there. It always felt like something was watching me at night, and it didn't like me. There were a couple of streetlights, but nothing much else. As an adult man, I was freaked out to take a walk by myself at night. There were no shops around, nothing to do. It really was in the middle of nowhere. All we could do was sit indoors and get drunk, which wasn't all that bad. This story takes place one night when we were drinking. We were in good spirits since it was a Friday and it was a late one. Whenever we do these late night drinking nights, I usually get some water before heading to bed to sober up. With being too drunk to drive, I had to go to the vending machine up the road a little. I didn't really want to go alone. Something about being out there really creeped me out. so I asked a colleague if he wanted to go with me. Thankfully, he said he wanted to, and we set off on our short walk to the vending machine. I felt great. The night air was sobering me up a little, and I was chatting with my co-worker. We arrived at the vending machine. My colleague went ahead of me and got a drink. He cracked it open, and then he started staring off into the distance. "What the fuck is that?" I heard him say, as I was inserting coins into the machine. I scanned the dark horizon, and there was nothing. Nothing but the trees swaying in the breeze, and a few distant rice fields. The night air was full of various chirps of insects and croaks of bullfrogs. Nothing but darkness. I didn't know what my friend was talking about.
"Hey!"
A voice called from the darkness. My blood ran ice cold. My eyes widened, and in a panic, I tried to find the owner of that voice. But I couldn't.
"Hey! Hey!"
It was slightly louder now. Shivers ran up my spine. Someone else was out here with us. I looked over at my friend, and I followed his eye line. And that's when I saw it. There was someone out there. I mean, it looked human. It looked to be male too. Something was off though. Its head was bigger than a normal human, and it looked to be on stilts because it was massive. It was clad in black, but had a bone-white face. The huge, hulking figure just stood, entirely motionless, staring at us, about 200 meters away from the vending machine. I couldn't say a word. I just stared in horror. And then my friend bolted. I had to run after him. And thankfully, we didn't have to run too far. Of course, all our colleagues didn't believe our crazy story. But there were some looks toward the window, checks of the locks, and none of them offered to go outside in search of what we had seen. I cannot 100% say if that thing was human. It was the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life. And that moment has haunted me for years. I have no idea what it wanted, but I think that if my friend and I didn't react in time, we might not be here today. There are things out there in the world that we have no idea about.
This is a story my dad told me one night, when he was drunk, a long time ago. Our family business is of a nautical nature. Simply put, we come from a long line of fishermen. As I'm sure you have heard from many cultures and creeds all around the world, scary things happen at sea. The deep, dark, cruel mistress is home to untold nightmares, the likes of which we as humans have yet to discover, thankfully. In a family full of fishermen, I have heard my fair share of stories, but no other story chilled my bones than my father's. The whispering voice and the black shadow. My dad heard these words from a fellow fisherman. When on board, at night, at sea, I can hear someone's voice whispering. Only slightly, enough to make you almost second guess it. I can't make out the words it's saying, but I know that it's human. I know it's a human's voice. I look across the sea, I'm sure that I can see a figure of a person standing on the water's surface. My dad said that he once saw that black shadow. I was night fishing for squid when I heard the sound of someone murmuring. I looked around to try and find the owner of the voice, then sniggered at my own stupidity for believing that someone was out there. I scanned the sea, and my eyes fell on a shadow. I felt for sure that it was a boy, but the shadow didn't move. A boy would bob on the ocean. Despite the waves, the figure stood completely still. The crewmate who I was with noticed me staring out at the sea. He was getting on in years, but he knew everything there was to know about night fishing. He said, "Ah, haven't seen that for years." "Don't worry, it's only bad news if you can see its face." The old man's words stuck with my dad. He then said about a month or two later, he was on a night out with all of his co-workers. Somehow, scary stories were the topic of discussion, and my dad brought up his own story. Then, the crewmate from before said, "I've seen that. Lately I feel like the shadow's been approaching. It's getting closer and closer every time I go out to sea. I don't know how to get away from it." The room fell silent. These two fishermen seemed to be in agreement that the shadow was out there. The crewmate, who said that the shadow was getting closer, was usually a very quiet and reserved guy. This incident seemed to be weighing heavily on his mind, and he looked genuinely frightened. My dad decided to give him a few days off to get over whatever was going on. He came back to my dad's company eventually, and after a little while, my dad asked him to go night fishing again. He really didn't want to do it, but I guess he needed the money, so he set sail on a simple solo fishing trip. And he never returned. It was suspected that his ship had some sort of engine failure, but when an independent marine accident investigative company came to look into my dad's colleague's death, they found nothing untoward. They couldn't find a single fault with the ship he was on, and no errors in our family's company. My dad blames himself. And that drunken night he looked at me and said, "I know it was out of my control, but I regret it. Remember this, the ocean is much more frightening than we can comprehend. Whatever that dark, shadowy figure was, it was after him."